everyone. Welcome to another Sales Hacker webinar. I know people are starting to file in here. So excited to see all of you. I know that you are not here for me, but you are here for these two amazing gentlemen from AltiSales. We're going to get started here in just a few minutes, but as people are coming in, I would love to hear where everyone is from. So one, make sure that your chat is turned to panelists and attendees, and tell us, who are you? I want to hear from you, Ed, Gabe, Guy, Javier, KP, JP, Catherine, Lindsay. Tell us who you are, where you're coming from, and even tell us your role. Are you an SDR? Are you a manager? Are you sales enablement? We want to hear. I'm coming from the beautiful Lubbock, Texas right now. I was just telling Tito we just moved out here to West Texas, and it's a little hot. Gabe, you are from beautiful Seattle, so I'm sure you're dealing with wonderful weather right now. Hopefully none of the fires from Canada are coming down. But yeah, this can be great. Very excited. Yes, thanks, Rodrigo. We're excited to hear from you too. So let's give it just another minute or so. Steven, it's hot and rainy in Tampa, Florida. Tito, is Tampa anything like Miami, temperature-wise?
I'm not so sure, actually. I haven't been to Tampa yet, but I gotta go there at some point. I have a few friends. Sam Silverman, who used to work at Outreach, I think is now based in Tampa, Florida. So I'll make it there someday. Steven Gonzalez is based there. Maybe we'll grab beers with a few people. I gotta start traveling more, actually.
Tampa Bay. Oh yeah, because of the Super Bowl. That's fun. I haven't heard that yet, Steven, so that's a good one. Okay, well, let's get started here. We're going to get started with just a little bit of housekeeping first. First and foremost, make sure that your chat is turned to panelists and attendees. We are going to make this incredibly interactive. So we want to be able to see your responses whenever we ask questions, really have y'all guide the conversation for us today, because this is really for you. And then secondly, the recording will be made available. We're still unsure if we're going to send it out or if it's just going to be on saleshacker.com, but we'll let you know regardless. If it is sent out, it will be available within 24 hours, so just keep an eye out for an email from us. Oh yeah, and then as always, right below, there's a little Q&A box, so make sure that you drop your questions there. If you don't want to drop them in the chat, you want to ask anonymously, you can do that as well. But most importantly, we want this to be super fun, so we're going to kick it off with some intros and then just jump into this. So, Rodrigo, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, telling us who you are, where you're from, and maybe one fun fact.
Hi, everyone. Super excited to be here. Thanks for inviting us. I'm originally from Bolivia. I am the Sales Ops Director at AltiSales. I've been working with Tito for over 2 years now. We've been gathering a lot of data and getting some great insights in this area. So we're growing the company and it's going really well. So yeah, super excited to share with you. One fun fact is I'm almost like a digital nomad. I've been traveling around a lot and it's been pretty fun.
Hey everybody, I'm Tito Bort, CEO at AltiSales, and I just love SDRs and sales development. I'm all over it. I optimize the hell out of everything. I'm an open book. So everything you guys want to know about sales development, or if you want us to run experiments, we're always testing new things and trying to improve efficiency. We don't believe in high volume. We hate auto dialers. We hate email blasting. We like controlled outreach, controlled and effective outreach. So we pride ourselves in random metrics that nobody measures, like our accounts to demo ratio. And we really optimize cold calling funnels to maximize our connect to demo ratios and things like that. So this should be a lot of fun. I want to make this incredibly interactive, by the way. Here we have kind of I think 10 to 12 slides to share and give you guys some insights into potential strategies you all can run as SDRs or SDR managers on how to improve your teams. But we're always looking for thoughts, questions, ideas on things that you all want to learn, or hypotheses that you all might have for what might work better or what might not work as well. And then we can test those at scale, because one, we're already collecting a lot of data, and two, we have 17 SDRs reaching out to all sorts of different personas and all sorts of different seniorities. We make $100 a day per SDR, all kind of like through outreach, and we send a bunch of emails. So yeah, again, this is going to be fun, and please use the chat or the Q&A in order to send us questions and see if we can set up next experiments and then run another webinar in the future as well. So looking forward to seeing your guys' thoughts.
Absolutely. Well, first off, so excited about both of you here. And like Tito said, this is really for all of y'all. So just help us guide the conversation today. Drop in the chat what you think. If you disagree with something, tell us why. If you agree with something and you're like, finally, someone understands exactly what I've been doing for all these years, like put that in the chat as well. So let's make this super interactive. But first, I want to get started with a question. And Rodrigo, I think that this is going to be really focused for you. Like 500,000 calls. That's a lot of information. We want to know, where did all these calls come from? Who were they going to? Give us a little bit of background on what this data was originally before you were able to kind of figure out what it even meant.
Yeah, well, as Tito mentioned, we've been making calls for a while, and we've always made sure to like tag some things that we thought were important, and all that data that we have starting being really helpful as we started analyzing like a lot of very like specific things. Like we're gonna show some insights right now. So yeah, we just made sure to like, whenever we have a lot of data, make sure to like that data is as clean as possible, and then we can tag it the way we need it to tag. And then after that, building the reports is kind of easy because we've done such a great job being diligent in so many areas of the company, getting all that data as clean as possible. So creating the reports has been pretty easy, and we can go through like some more specifics once we get to the reports themselves. But yeah, that's basically what we're doing. We're tracking the same data across different clients, which is very helpful.
Yeah, you know, one thing that you said multiple times was using clean data. I know many of us have had to just kind of get on the good old Google machine and hope that we're finding the right phone number for the right person, and we're having to go through 6 gatekeepers. How are you making sure that your information and like especially your contacts are the right data?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We've analyzed so many data vendors for so many years, and right now you can find another webinar we did with Sales Hacker, which was like the battle of the data providers, and we analyzed ZoomInfo versus Lucia versus LeadIQ. We came up with a conclusion that we got to use them all. You can't just use one. And then even when we were doing that, we're like, okay, wait a second, how are we going to tag like personas? And we're like, this won't help it. So we said we're going to just tag manually. Like we're going to go on LinkedIn, and every person that we're going to go reach out to, we're going to define what title do they have, and then are they going to be engineering or IT or marketing or real estate, or like what is the persona, and then the seniority. We're reaching out to managers or directors or VPs. Everything is going to get tagged. We're, as of recently, we're also tagging like every industry. So if you're an engineer working at a financial services company, we will know that, and we'll start getting even more granular with the data. Now that we're collecting so many things, the other thing that we tag that people don't usually tag, and it's very hard to do, is the time zone of the person you're calling. And this is not based on HQ of the company, but of the person's LinkedIn. So we're going to go on every person we're reaching out to. If they're based in California, it will be tagged like Pacific. If they're based in Miami, Florida, they'll be tagged Eastern. Right? If they're based in Chicago, it will be Central. And the reason to do that is like, we want to understand our connect rate, call it by hour of the day, but not by hour of the day that we're dialing, by hour of the day that the person's picking up. Because like if you're dialing at 11 a.m. on your Central time, you're dialing East Coast, you're dialing truly at noon. And if you're at that same time dialing Pacific, you're calling 9 a.m. So your connect rate isn't really comparable, right? What we want to know is like, are there certain patterns? Like, do marketing people work or tend to pick up the phone more in the morning or more in the afternoon or during lunch? Or like, what can we learn and what can we see? Are there any trends that are like general for the whole world and industry? Are there certain trends that are only available to personas? So yes, we go crazy with just tagging our data. Then we wait and wait and wait and wait, and then at some point Rodrigo's building some formula fields, and then we're like, wait a second, look at this report we built 3 months ago. It's showing us something crazy. And then our team kind of like adapts. So if you're ready, Katie, we can go in,
do it.
share some screens. And again, I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of like questions and comments from the audience here. But I'm going to show us first some of the ones that are like, we call them not necessarily a failed experiment, but an experiment that didn't really teach us much. Can you all see my screen with a slide? Got it. So this is one that we were like, holy cow, is there a day of the week that it would be better to call compared to other days? And when we looked at it, truly like, sure, maybe it's slightly better to call on Tuesdays than on Wednesdays. But if you look at the statistical significance of this data, it really doesn't matter. And again, remember, this is our internal data across tons of different personas and 500,000 calls here. So is anybody surprised that all days have a very similar connect rate, or is this what people would have expected?
Yeah, I would love to hear from the audience because I am very much surprised. I always thought like Fridays would be, you hear so much about, well, Fridays are great connect days because people work less those days, they're around their phone. Like there's these weird theories around it, but I'm actually surprised that Fridays and Mondays are very similar because Mondays, I always felt like it was so much harder to get a hold of people because, they're doing their back to work shuffle of catching up on emails and doing all this stuff. So it's interesting. But yeah, we've got a few people that are like, Monday, we maybe agree with you. But yeah, this is awesome.
And a question that always comes up regarding connect rate. It doesn't matter how many calls if we make more calls on Mondays than Tuesdays, because connect rate depends on like how many people answer the phone out of like every 100 calls. So it doesn't really matter. Like some people get confused sometimes. I had that question before. We're considering that. We're considering that like some days have more calls than others, and this is like we know that. So this data is responsive to that.
We've got a few questions real quick. Are we looking at mobile or landline or mixed? Is this just calls in general?
Correct. Great question. If you see the other webinar, again, I don't expect that people have seen that one, but what we're going to do is we go on Zoom Infolution Lead IQ, and for every lead in and of itself, we try to find the best direct dials that we can, and we also tag the company headquarters number, if there is one. So that what we're going to do is we're going to call direct lines first and then HQ if not. So the process is very similar across different days, which means this will not affect that. But yes, we have a lot of direct dials. So if people are like, holy cow, wait a second, like I dial in my company and my connect rate's 2 or 3% and not 4. Why is that happening? You're going to see some other data on the different personas. We're going to make it interactive. Awesome. And you'll see more of that stuff. I also see 2 quick questions I want to answer. Like, are we tagging these manually? Yes, we are. Sad but true. Like, sometimes if you want great insights, you got to do a lot of hard work. Mm-hmm. So you can't just rely on tagging like en masse or whatever. We do have a slight advantage. Like, we have specific clients that are reaching out to specific personas. So we have a client that might only sell to marketers. Those are easy to tag. Like, right, everybody we're reaching out to is marketers, and we're running Boolean searches on like LinkedIn Sales Navigator that allows us to specifically tag people. And you're going to see the granularity of the data. It's not like we're going to distinguish marketing ops from marketing, right? We just consider those to be kind of like marketing personas, and so on and so forth. And like engineering, we're not going to distinguish like a architect versus like an engineer. We still consider all those to be kind of like engineering-minded folks type of thing. So. Cool. Questions are coming through and I want to make this interactive, so I'll answer those. So do Alti reps are dialing, also doing all the data LinkedIn research? No, 0. We have a dedicated data research team that grabs all the personas. Our SDRs do have a boot camp where they will go and research for a few days and understand how much of a terrible job that is, and how time consuming and stressful and boring it is to go do your own data research. But eventually, like as they start working, that task is taken care of for them. Tagging done in Salesforce? No, tagging done on Outreach directly. No need to tag Salesforce. Yep. So we tag in our main main sheets, get them on outreach, get them tagged on certain custom fields. And yes, like if you have it on our, here's the funny part. Because I have 17 SDR teams working with 17 different clients, the CRM we use for every client is different. So I can't tag on CRM. So we tag on outreach, and then we can collect the data via the outreach API. Therefore, that is an easier, faster, better way to streamline it. If you only do calls for one company, right? Like I would recommend tagging in Salesforce, but probably unless you're a big company, you won't have the data that we have, right? We're making 1,700 dials a day, right? Like 8,500 dials a week, right? Like 40,000 dials a month. Damn, that's a lot of data, right? So yeah, 10 months go by. Holy cow, 400,000 dials. That's crazy. So cool. Next thing we want to do, and this is interesting. I want to show you guys. Let's have people vote. Do you guys think that connect rate is higher in the morning or in the afternoon? And this is across all personas, across 500,000 dials. I'd love to get people's opinions. Tom says afternoon, no difference. A couple people say morning, same, morning. Cool. We were a little bit shocked by this as well. Let me show you the data. Afternoon, on average, is better than morning. And this was a little bit weird to us because I've heard so many people tell me, like, call in the morning. And what you're going to see is this doesn't apply to every persona ever. We're soon going to start looking at different personas and show you some of the data. Remember that this is not about the morning of the person who is dialing, but the person who is receiving the call. So Rodrigo has done an incredible job on looking up every person's LinkedIn profile and grabbing the location of where they live, not the company's HQ or not where the company's based or whatever, the personal's like LinkedIn location, and then associating that with the dialing time. Some other people have done experiments that are different. They say, oh, we do it by area code. Well, guess what? I've had a 305 phone number for years, and I lived in California half the time. So we don't like doing area code. We really like doing like East Coast. And then somebody's asking date range for the data set. We've had data collected since like 2017, but starting to tag time zones started early 2019. So it's a mix of pre-COVID and during COVID. And yeah, and the personas and all that, I think lives all the way from 2017. So a lot of data, but I think our data analysis, just to keep it to the 520 something thousand calls, is also only being analyzed since 2019. So we could potentially go back and do an analysis of 2017 to 2020, like February, and then another analysis of February 2020 to call it today and see if there's any different.
Rocco asked a really good question. Are dials in the morning as strong numbers-wise as they are in the afternoon? So I'm assuming, are you getting the same amount of people dialing in the morning as you are in the afternoon, or are you seeing that reps are kind of delaying in the morning and pushing a lot more towards the afternoon, and that's why the numbers are so much higher?
Now, remember, this is percentage-wise. So, like, if I have to tell you, I think the data we're considering here is we're considering morning the first 4 hours. So 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, and noon to 1, right? Those are the 4 morning hours. And 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5 is afternoon. That's the breakdown. The breakdown by day is exactly the same. Somebody asked. So we looked at this on a per day basis, and it's also very similar. We don't have the graph, but Monday mornings, Friday afternoons, Monday mornings versus Friday mornings, Monday afternoons versus Friday afternoons. We're not seeing a huge difference. But yeah, this is interesting for us too. Remember, this is percentage. So yes, if we look at the first 4 hours of the day versus the last 4 hours of the day, I think our calls are 45% mornings, 55% afternoons. However, it's percentage connect rate. So the data is very clean. There's like, call it 230,000 dials in the morning and 280,000 dials in the afternoon, and these are the connect rates. So good questions coming. I think if we're good here, I want to show something that Rodrigo has done for us that is like really, really cool. We started breaking this down by persona because we had some of our SDRs saying, hey, I like this idea, or like this idea that morning doesn't work as well as afternoon. but does that apply to my campaign because I am calling engineers, or I am calling marketers, or I am calling real estate people, or I am calling whatever else? So we created some different personas. I'm going to show you what the connect rates look like persona by persona by persona. And initially, we blurred out what the persona is. And the graphs are looking interesting. And we're only considering personas where we've made over, I believe, is 20,000 dials. So this should be a good chunk of dials. We're also not counting any hour of the day where there were under, I think, like 400 dials or whatever, and because the data was kind of crazy. Like if you looked at 7 a.m. in this case, or like 5 to 6 p.m., the data would go like, oh, connect rate is like 20%. But if you made 5 dials and connected once, like that really doesn't matter, doesn't count. Cool. So guess I'm just gonna like start like opening up some of these personas so people can look at it, and you'll see some that are weird. So this is IT. This is our connect rate on IT. It looks very weird to us. For some reason, and the way you look at this data is if it says noon, it's from noon to 1. And if it says 2, it's from 2 to 3 type of thing. So this was very weird to us. It seems like mornings are working really well. As the morning goes, keeps going, like connect rate dips. Lunch or right after lunch works really well, and then it dips in the afternoon, and then end of the day it goes up again. We don't know why, but it seems like IT people might be working in this capacity. Next one. Can somebody guess what this might be? Low connect rate in the morning, high connect rate in the afternoon. It's a sales, marketing, leadership. Leadership we wouldn't consider necessarily to be an industry. These are like personas. So we consider leadership to be like seniority, kind of how we think about data. But sales and marketing being guesses, look at this. Yes, sales and marketing. This is revenue leaders. So this is going to be like heads of revenue, or like we're considering maybe some CMOs or like really, really high VPs of sales. So that was a good guess. We have some very specific clients that sell to people who are in charge of like maybe the whole funnel. So really cool. Another interesting one, fairly low connect rates here with a dip in early afternoons mostly, and then late in the day. I'll reveal this one too. HR.
I think Matt guessed it before you.
Yeah, there you go. Matt said HR. That's cool. And then Katie, I think you're on mute, by the way. I saw your mouth open, but no sound came through.
Oh, well, I just think it's so interesting because what I think is most interesting is that lunchtime, or like right before lunchtime, seems to be so popular. But and not to hate on anyone in HR, but traditionally in my experience of ever trying to find someone in HR, lunchtime's like, oh, let's start socializing and talk with people in the office and like noodle around. So I just think that's so interesting because I wouldn't have ever imagined like HR folks be at their office. But I've also seen a lot of people like eating lunch at their desk, so I could see them just answering the phone and not even realizing, or thinking to look because they're having lunch. So it's just, I think that's super interesting.
And sometimes we look at this data and people are like, who cares? 2.4 versus 3.8. Like, it's the same thing. It's still low. But if you really think about it, if you're going to make 100 dials, call it like in this hour of the day, you're going to make a 20 call blitz every day of the week. If you're calling between 1 and 2 p.m., those 100 calls will connect to 2.4. Versus if you call between like noon and 1, you'll connect to 3.8. Okay, not huge for 1 week, but make it a month. And if you multiply this by 4, you're suddenly reaching like 19 people rather than 12 people. And holy cow, 12 to 19, you're having so many more at-bats. And it's not only about getting more at-bats, it's like the mental stamina of the rep. Like having to make 100 dials to connect to 2.4 people versus 3.8 people really changes the way you do it. Like 2.4 means 40 dials per connect, while 3.8 means like 27 or 26 dials per connect, somewhere around there. So it's much, much easier. It's quite interesting.
So it's like,
how people. Yep.
it's like 58% better. It's like when it's like small numbers, like connect rate are usually small numbers, but like it's a huge percentage difference. So that's why this is even more relevant.
That's right. For that. Let's look at another one. Pretty high connect rates here across the board, mostly in the afternoon. This is a weird industry. I know what it is. I'll just show it. I won't have people guess. This is people who are in charge of like real estate or facilities or things like that. People that might be in charge of buildings, right? And they tend to pick up the phone a lot because they communicate a lot via phone. They're in charge of real estate for, call it Oracle. Oracle has 300 buildings across the world, tons of offices, and they're looking for different technologies that might help them. Pretty high connect rate, especially in the afternoon. I'm going to have people guess the next one. So get ready here. Look at this one. Terrible connect rate in the morning, 2%. One of the worst ones that we see. And then it starts going up later in the afternoon. Random dip at 3 p.m. for some reason. And then high. Yeah, a lot of people are guessing this one. Hadn't come up yet, so not too hard. This is engineering. If you're calling engineers, this is counterintuitive, but here's what I have. Like, after I saw the data, I was like, why is this happening? And here's my theory. My theory is that, one, engineers tend to come into the office later in the day. And these are like night owls. They're most productive when people aren't bugging them, right? So they don't want to be in the office at 8 or 9 or 10. And then like usually after lunch is when they're going to like be in the office and be available. But also like they might have some meetings here and there. Perhaps 3 p.m. is a bunch of meetings. And then if you actually looked at the data, like the 5 p.m., we didn't have a lot of calls, but the 5 p.m. was like an 8% connect rate. It's kind of crazy. Nobody's calling them at that time. So if you call after hours to engineering, that might work. And remember, this is the time of the person you're calling. So if you're Pacific time and it's 2:30 p.m., start calling East Coast people. Don't call Pacific. Pacific is like about to dip. Go to East Coast. I might want to stop here and see if there's like questions or comments from the audience, or what's going through your head, Katie, as we're showing all this data.
Well, I just think I'm so thankful I rarely had a call into like engineering and HR because I would never have done a great job. I think if I'm a salesperson in the audience right now, I'm evaluating what do I need to do in my day to day to be a lot more successful. And having been a seller, I think of I was that early bird getting to the office at 7 a.m. Really liked making all my East Coast calls first thing in the morning because I knew it was 9 o'clock their time. And then I would shift as the time changed going into the zones when I'm seeing, man, I wish I had this information because I could have been so much more strategic in what I was doing and make every single dial I did count a lot more instead of just going through the time zones because that's what we were told to do. But I'm curious. I know we have a lot of sellers in here and I would love to hear from them and like, please drop it in the chat, like what's going through your mind because it's just so interesting. One, also, I guess, in addition, I would never have the patience to do this much tagging and like figure all this out. So I think that's just amazing. But yeah, it just makes me really reevaluate how I could have done my sales. And even now as a community manager, when I reach out to people, what's the best time? Because I'm still trying to connect with people. So it's really interesting, that's for sure. What did your reps think, Tito? Whenever they saw this, were they surprised? And did you have reps that, wanted to reevaluate how they approach their sales?
Yes, our reps are just like very interested in like how should they adapt their days? Like when should they take the hour break? Like if they're gonna go have lunch, should they have lunch at the same time that the prospects are having lunch? Like if it's 11 a.m., should I my time and I work East Coast? Like should I be calling East Coast or Central or like Pacific, right? So like being able to, because we have everything tagged within Outreach, they can also select the time zone they're calling. So now they can pull these graphs and say, well, I'm calling engineering. I was starting my day at 8 a.m. and I'm Central time, and I was calling the 9 a.m. Eastern. Holy cow, you're right. I haven't been connecting in the morning. So now they're saying, what if I shift my day? Instead of doing afternoon workouts at AltiSales, I'd rather do my workouts in the morning. I'm going to start my day at 11 a.m. now, and I'm going to start calling kind of like East Coast first. And then when it gets to like 3 p.m. East Coast, they're like, nope, I'm going to start calling like Central or Pacific. And then they're adapting their dials. And here's what I'm going to say. Like, don't go crazy with like, do not ever call at 3 p.m. because there's a dip. Or, like, that's a terrible strategy. But if you're a traditional SDR and you're doing your own data research, like, think about this. Like, calling revenue leaders, do your data research from 8 a.m. until 11 a.m. in the morning, then call in the afternoons. Are you calling HR people? Hey, call in the mornings, do your research early afternoon, call it from 1 to 3 p.m., 3 p.m., call again, finish your day, finish your data research, right? Like, I'm seeing incredible people like John Barrows and Morgan Ingram and everybody talking about like, set your schedule and put your data research hours. I'm seeing a lot of people are like, yeah, my research hours are going to be 3 to 5 p.m. I'm like, they're calling engineering. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, don't do that. Like, the afternoon is the best time. Move your data research to the morning. And these are just awesome, awesome insights.
What I'm also really curious, right? Because this isn't just information for SDRs and reps of any sorts, but it's also for managers, right? How do you think, if I'm a manager attending right now, how do you think I should now look at my work schedule for my team? Should I have them make these pivots, or as a manager, do I say, hey, you guys should start coming in later and staying later because this is when you're going to hit the people that you're trying to get a hold of?
Here's our approach. I don't want to tell people when to work. Not in the SDR role. You are in this role because you control your schedule. A lot of my SDRs say, I never want to be an AE. What a horrible thing. You're just cruising around your day. You're making plans for Friday afternoon. And the SDR puts a meeting on your calendar on Friday at 4 p.m. because the prospect was specific time and wanted it at that time. It's like, I don't want anybody to control my schedule. So I don't control the SDR schedule. I just show them the data and I say, you're calling engineers. Here's your connect rate by hour. You decide what to do. Let me train you on how to change your the time zone that you're calling. Do what you wish. Hit your quota. On you. Let us know if you need training. Right. So I think that's the best way. There's another distinction here to make because somebody asked in the chat, like, hey, this is good approach, but wait a second. 5 connects for 100 dials is low in general. Like, what the hell's happening? Why is your connect rate so low? We're measuring connect rate per dial, not per prospect. So if a prospect has 3 phone numbers, we're calling all 3 phone numbers. If they pick up the call on the 3rd dial, we're considering 1 out of 3 connected, meaning a 33% connect for that prospect, right? And therefore, if you're making $100 a day, you might only be calling 40 prospects, 2.5 phone numbers per prospect. Out of those 100 dials, we're connecting 5. That might mean that out of the 40 prospects, we connected 5, which means our true like prospect connect rate might be closer to 12%. This also depends entirely on like SMB versus like enterprise, and it depends a lot on the persona. You can see the engineers kind of like top at 437. When we're calling real estate, we have like 6-7% connect rate. And again, this is out of 100 dials across different personas. So that's why we like using a lot of our data, because if you go compare one company's data to another company's data, you'll see a lot of variability. And if you don't have 500,000 dials, the data will be not as statistically significant, to put it that way. I'm going to read through a couple of the chats here. Blah, blah. Somebody else says 5% sounds like a really good connect rate. It really depends how many calls you, how many data vendors you have and whatever else. So I know people that are connecting at a 2% or 1% connect rate. I know other people at 14. So again, depends a lot on your persona. Does it include callbacks or inbound calls? I know we're tagging those, Rodrigo. Is this data including callbacks or inbound calls for the connect rate?
I will need to check exactly, but like most of the outbound calls, most of them are outbound calls. Like, so the ones that we have time zone for, they're probably like almost all of them outbound.
Correct. Yes, I would agree with that. If there's any like callbacks, it's like less than 1% for sure. And I would say less than 0.1% of the total dial. So I wouldn't think that's affecting this too much. I'm going to continue going down. I think we have 2 more personas to go through. Look at this one, quite interesting. Bad morning and bad later in the day. This is medical. If you're calling like medical providers, doctors, people like that. Again, this is like very specific depending on what you sell. We have the blessing and the curse to be calling so many personas. And then the last one is the most interesting. Like almost no change. Lots of variability. Just don't call me at 8 in the morning. I'm not going to pick up. Outside of that, fairly even. This is marketing people.
You know, it always reminds me of those the videos with Scott Barker and who's the guy from Lessonly? I don't know if you saw those where they did like what marketers think of themselves and what sales folks think of themselves, and the image that comes into my mind is like marketers showering at like 9 a.m. drinking their kombucha with their fancy leaves hanging from the shower heads, being like, oh, this is just so synergistic of us. And and I think that's absolutely hilarious because I'm sure that's what they're doing at that time. No offense, marketers, but that's awesome.
One more question. I think the data that's coming now is going to be the most interesting of the webinar. We just got a question here. Somebody whose company was using ZoomInfo. They cut it out because probably it might be too expensive, and then they are looking for other data providers. Watch my webinar on Battle of the Data Providers. You're going to get the answers directly there. If you don't want to spare yourself the hour, I'd say Lead IQ. If you're calling US, is my favorite alternative to ZoomInfo. And actually, it's not only my favorite alternative; it's my favorite complement. So we have ZoomInfo, Lucia, Lead IQ. We have Bombora. We have Clearbit. We have HireTool. We have, I don't know, like I've lost track. We pay for so many tools. The LinkedIn Sales Navigator, like we're gathering data from everywhere. We've tried things like Seamless.ai and did not like it. A lot of dirty data, a lot of data that wasn't for us. Doesn't mean that it's bad for everybody. Just the times we tried it, it was not for us. We tried Sales Intel, also not for us. Didn't work for us. Doesn't mean that they're bad. Just in our perspective, not something we want to use at the moment. We're happy to try them again if they want to allow us to follow our buying process and check how their data works and whatever else. I welcome it. I just had another call with another vendor who said, we have the best phone numbers in the world. We're going to beat ZoomInfo, blah, blah, blah. I said, okay, let's do XYZ 1, 2, 3. Like, let me do this to evaluate your tool. They're like, we don't let people evaluate that way. I'm like, okay, if you don't want me to follow my process, I can't validate your data is good. So LeadIQ, Lucia, ZoomInfo, my top 3 for sure. LinkedIn we don't necessarily use for emails and cell phone numbers. We use it for names, titles, companies. I don't like getting that from places like ZoomInfo. Like if you go on ZoomInfo, like, I want to get the VP of marketing at Coca-Cola. They're like, oh, we have 7. You're like, oh, you have 7. That's awesome. And they actually look at it and like, yes, Coca-Cola has like maybe 4 VPs of marketing. And then like, what are the other 3? There are people who already left like a year ago or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Spelling for Lucia is Lusha. Cool. Let's get to the meat of things and my most beautiful part of the webinar. Look at this data. This is connect rate by the minute of the hour. What are we looking at here? Here's what this means. If you call between 9:06 and 9:15, 10:06 to 10:15, 11:06 to 11:15, noon 06, noon 15, and so on and so forth, your connect rate will average 4.33. We didn't want to split this by like 10-minute periods from early in the morning all the way at night, because like if you think about it, there's 8 hours. There's like, if we do segments of 10 minutes, that would be 50 segments. There wouldn't be enough calls for the data to be statistically significant. So we're aggregating all the hours. What this is showing us is that if you call between minute 06 to minute 15, I presume a lot of people are in meetings or they're doing things, so they're already in those meetings. If you call 26 to 35, people might just have left a 30-minute meeting or something like that, right? Same at the end of the hour. If you call between minute 46 and 55 or 56 to 05, just as the hour is ending or about to start, you're going to get better connect rate. And internally, we have a little bit more granular data. Like we have it by segments of like 3 minutes and 5 minutes and 7 minutes, and like we're trying to optimize for specific hours. But unfortunately, that data is AltiSales proprietary. So some of these insights we're going to keep to ourselves. And if you're frustrated with your company and they're not giving you the right tools or the right training or the right data or the right anything, and you're like, screw this, I need another job, we're hiring. And we only hire top performers. So if you're a top guy and you're frustrated, come over. We'll give you all the data, all the training, all the tools, and we'll help you out. And you'll perform incredibly well, and you'll get high commissions on top of a higher base than you're probably making. We pay really, really well. Cool. Let's see. When do most of your reps make your calls? Good question. I'd say it's like split across the day, and you're going to see a little bit of a bell curve, not necessarily because of the time they make the calls, but you can select the time zone. So I would presume like people on the East Coast never start at 8 a.m. Because why would you? They start at 9, and then they're calling East Coast, right? And then some of the people in Pacific, like they might start at 8 a.m. or 7 a.m., but they're calling East Coast. So therefore, their calls are more geared towards like later in the day, right? And then the same happens like end of the day, like they might like my East Coast people might stop at 4 p.m. So you're not seeing my East Coast team call too much East Coast late in the day. They're calling Pacific at that point, and maybe they're going to change their mind after everybody sees this, right? But my Pacific team is also doing the same. Like as it gets to like 1 p.m., 2 p.m., they're trying to call people who are receiving the calls earlier in the day. So there's a little bit of a bell curve, but still like very statistically significant. Like if you count the 8 hours of the day, and we're counting 500,000 phone calls on average, that should give you what, 60,000 calls per hour, and maybe we have like 80,000 calls in the middle hours, and then 60 in like the 10 a.m. to 11 and 3 to 4, and then maybe less beginning and end of the day. I know we talked a lot about connect rate. I want to give one more insight that is outside of connect rate, and I want to ask the audience, see if they got this right. One thing that we looked at is according to when you set a meeting and how many days out you schedule it for, what the show rate might be. So if I'm scheduling 1 day out or 2 days out or 5 days out, or 5 days being exactly a week, we're only looking at business days, versus 10 days out, aka 2 weeks from now, I actually have the prospect on the phone or via email. Depending on when they pick the time, do you think people are more likely to show up if they book a week out, 2 weeks out, 2 days out, 3 days out? What is your top? What is the most optimal point? And what is like a no, don't book, too soon or too late? You all tell me. Somebody says after 2.5 weeks, it drops. 3 days is the optimal point. Sooner is better. Straight line after that. No more than a week out. Yeah, 3 to 6 days is optimal. 1 week out, 3 to 5 business days. This is going to shock you guys a little bit. Somebody got it right, but not everybody. Like to schedule 2-3 days out. Following week, 8 to 10 days out. Boom. This is the data. Almost a straight line down, depending on when you schedule it for. The best time to schedule it, we call it today for today. Catch them in the morning. Hey, you got some time this afternoon? When are you available? Just 20 minutes, right? And remember, this is cold outbound. We don't care about the inbounds. When you get an inbound, they're like, I want to look at a demo on Thursday. Like those show rates are high. Here we're only looking at you calling them. You go hunt them. It's not, rocket science here, but yes, after 2 weeks out, it looks pretty awful. I want to keep my show rate at around 70% or higher. And what you're seeing here is like less than 5 days, you're really averaging between 70 and 80%. 5 days to 10 days, you're averaging more like 66, 67%. And then more than 2 weeks out, you're more averaging like 62. So keep that in mind. And my like suggestion for SDRs is don't force it to do it sooner, but just your first suggestion should be sooner. So you might be on the phone. They say, okay, yeah, blah, blah, blah. I do X, Y, Z. You're like, hey, the way we approach that problem is this other way. It's like, this might make sense, man. Do you have some time to chat? And we can just show you kind of how we're thinking about this. Are you open maybe later this afternoon for 15, 20 minutes, maybe 3 p.m., or should we look at tomorrow or 2 days out? And here's my hypothesis of why this happens. If they have an open slot, call it right now, I connect with somebody on the phone. If they have tomorrow 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. open slot, chances that something else comes up that needs to take that time are very low because it's so soon. Well, if I book it a week out, this Friday, their boss goes like, "Hey, dude, we got to meet next week. Can you do Wednesday?" They look at the calendar like, "Which of these meetings can I cancel?" Like, "Oh yeah, this vendor, whatever, outbound. Hey, cool. I don't, non-urgent. Delete, new invite." They will replace your slot with somebody else's. The further out you book it, it's more chances that correct vendors calls are the first to go. There's higher chances that somebody else will take your slot. So try to adapt yourself a little bit to the prospect. Try to book it as soon as possible. And yes, you're maximizing your show rate. So imagine this. Imagine if you're just spreading your calls, or you're mostly calling in the morning at a 3.7 connect rate, or you're even calling revenue leaders or engineers mostly in the morning, and your connect rate wasn't the 3%. I'm giving you tactics that will take you from 3 to maybe 4 or even higher than 4. From that, you're going to connect to 33% more people. And then we're giving you tactics on the hour that you can call. That's even going to increase you a little bit more. So now call it from 30, we're going 50% more connects on the month. If your quality stays the same, then what you're going to see is 50% more connects on the month. Then I'm telling you when to schedule these for to increase your show rate. If your show rate goes from 70 to 80%, that's another 12%. Multiply that by your 50. That's another 65 or 62% increase or 61% increase, whatever that might be, in terms of like hitting quota. You're not changing your data vendors. You're not changing your messaging. You're not changing your targeting. You're just getting strategic on what hours of the day do you make calls versus what hours of the day do you do data research and you target people, and when do you schedule meetings for. And that in and of itself can increase your results by 50, 60% and take you from missing quota to hitting quota. So hopefully this was helpful for a lot of people, and we're happy to stick around and answer so many more questions.
Wow. Yeah, it's so amazing. Like I said earlier, I wish this was something I knew as a seller because, so often I would say, I don't know why people aren't showing back up. I don't know why this isn't happening, or, I don't know why I'm struggling on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. whenever I'm trying to call these folks, and just having this information is like just absolutely amazing. So I'm so appreciative of that. Like Tito said, we've got a few minutes. So if you've got any questions, please drop them into the chat. Looks like Joel's super interested in, Tito, if your reps ever leave voicemails and if that leads to connects, or if there's any data surrounding that as well.
Yeah, we don't have a strict voicemail policy. We let reps pick their own adventure and decide if they want to leave voicemails. We have some good and best practices here and there. It's hard to collect data on voicemails because we don't get a lot of callbacks. And then sometimes the callbacks, sometimes on an email, they see our phone number, they might call us back. Sometimes we are leaving a voicemail that's not even asking for a callback, it's asking to check the email. So like we might say, "Hey, John, this is Mike calling. I know I can catch you today, but hey, I'm sending you an email. Subject line is like data integrity. If you can check that, I'd love to see, to get your thoughts." So then like it's hard to figure out the real influence of voicemails because like, okay, is that increasing open rate? Is that increasing reply rate? It's hard to correlate the data. Like, is this because of the voicemail? Did they even listen to the voicemail? So yeah, that's a little bit of like an answer. Like I don't have a concrete like insight from voicemails. Other people asking connect rates according to the hour of the day for each time zone. Like, do people that live in Pacific time zone pick up the phone at different hours than people who live on East Coast? We didn't think that would be the case. We haven't analyzed the data in that way. It's potentially something we can do. I'll let Rodrigo kind of like write that down and think through it, and maybe in the next webinar we'll do it. Slides will be shared. A recording will be shared as well. Phone fields in outreach, we use at least 4. And we wish we had more. Feature requests for outreach allow us to upload more phone numbers directly. They only have like home, I think it's called home, voice over IP, direct dial an office or something, or mobile an office. And then like if you have more phone numbers, you got to upload them manually. You can't do it through a CSV or push the data, which is a little bit annoying. So yeah. Wow, so many questions came through in the last like minute or two. Support calls with email sequences. 100%. All our calls are supported by email sequences. So it's all phone, email, LinkedIn, direct mail, video, all combined, all through outreach. We use a lot of different tools for that. So yes, not a lot of data on EU. Somebody just asked about European data. We do call European phone numbers and prospects, sometimes target European companies, but I would say out of the 520,000 calls that we were analyzing, maybe like 1 to 3% are European, maybe 5%. So can't analyze it by the hour of the day or anything like that. That'd be splitting it too granularly. So anyway, that seems like a lot. Sorry.
No, this has been absolutely amazing. I know we've got a lot of reps on here. We've got a lot of managers on here, some sales development folks. I recognize some of y'all. And I hope this was so incredibly helpful. If you liked it, send us an email. Let us know your feedback, because I know that this was just such great information. I mean, this is stuff that no one else is doing right now, and no one's taking the time to do. So we are so appreciative of your guys' effort in this and even being willing to share it with us. Yes, like Anton said, and John, bravo, great job, great takeaways. Thank you so much. And if there's,
Awesome.
Next, hopefully we can do another one and answer even more of these questions for y'all. So
here's a question for the audience. Like, what else do you all want to learn? Like, we got a sales ops powerhouse here. We can measure all sorts of cool things. We're always looking for better ideas. I'm trying to get better, and you've seen it. Like, I saw Mikey Powell ask some questions. He was on our SDR Superstar series, doing a lot of like cool things back then with direct mail and whatever else. And like, we've adopted some of those techniques and methods. So I'm always trying to figure out who's doing something smart that I can learn from, implement, test, iterate, make it perfect, and then share it. So I'm an open book because so many of you are open books. So if anybody wants to chat with us and you have something that's already working with you, and you're like, Tito, this is working, but can we like collaborate, test it out on your own instance, bring me the data, and then I can bring that data to my manager, my boss, my director, my VP, my C level. Hey, I would love to do that, right? Want to test subject lines? Let's do it. Want to test like email content? Let's do it. Want to test like specific scripts? Let's do it. And then like we have a very specific methodology for how we measure the effectiveness of like cold calling. So we have so many insights on like openers that work, openers by persona, right? All sorts of like, how do you structure your pitch? Types of questions you ask. You ask like, how you doing question versus like whatever other question versus like, what do you currently have in place versus how do you rate yourself in regards to like XYZ? Like we have different like ways to engage people. We're starting to measure that persona by persona by persona and gathering insights. I wish I could share those with you all, but probably these aren't gonna like be super helpful unless you're measuring things correctly in outreach. So for all those science data geeks that are or want to, I'm happy to collaborate one-on-one, and perhaps we will talk in the future and do another webinar.
And I'm taking notes here. Like there are a lot of great suggestions here. Like people are putting in the comments. I'm like copying them all. And if we don't have that data, like if we think it's important too, like we'll like start tagging, or like we'll start like working on our data to like get those specific metrics, because some things we might be able to get right now because we already have the data. Some things it could be like we can get it in like 3 months or like 6 months, depending on how many calls we make, or like, so yeah, all of these are really great. Thank you for all the suggestions.
Let me keep answering some questions because I also want to use my scientific mind to like bust some myths. So there's a question on like, is there a correlation between prospect seller talk time and successful outcomes? We haven't necessarily seen that, and I had misread your question. I was thinking if it was like length of the call, but like if it's a 50-50 ratio versus 60-40, we're not measuring that actually. We just record the calls via outreach. We're not using like Gong or Chorus to record record SDR calls. I think, I don't know necessarily why. One, we didn't see the need, and I would also hate the idea of having to like let people know that the calls are being recorded, which I think is automatic in those tools. Not great for outbound and whatever. Also, I don't have a lot of data, but I can tell you our SDR team books lots of meetings, and our talk to listen is maybe 80% talk, 20% listen. So that's interesting. Optimal length of the call. Not a great thing to measure, because sometimes you're going to call the main HQ line, you're going to go through a directory, then you're going to connect. So like the length of the call doesn't necessarily tell you the truth. Like what you really would want to know is like the length of like the two people speaking. Our methodology is the shorter the better, but you got to build value. Like build value as quickly as possible and just get the meeting booked. Because nobody, like you're calling out the blue, nobody wants to talk to you for 15 minutes before they agree to a meeting, right? So what I do is like, hey, I'm just calling to see if this would be relevant to set up some time. Let me ask a couple of questions, see what do you think? How are you guys currently marketing, managing your like Facebook ads? Are you guys doing X, Y, or Z? Or like, we're doing X. We're like, awesome. As you're doing X, do you think about it this way, or this way? They're like, I think about it this way. They're like, cool. We have some insights to share with you about how you can do it better. Do you have 15 minutes later today or early tomorrow morning to take a look? Right? So as short as possible while asking a few questions. You can even make it like multiple choice option. They select their answer and you have a call path for each of those. So that's our idea. Emails on outreach. Do videos work? Attachments, smart links. We've tried videos. They work. We've tried. We're right now doing a big test on video confirmation. So like once the meeting is scheduled, can we increase show rate? If instead of sending like a confirmation via email or a phone call, we send you a video confirming tomorrow's call 3 p.m. You open it up. There's a quick video like, hey, just want to make sure we're all good for tomorrow 3 p.m. Like we're getting ready for the call, and I'm bringing my director. Hopefully, it's good to go. If something comes up, please let me know. Whatever else, you can create your own script for the video. Make it 2 minutes, and then at the beginning, we're going to try to personalize by the name of the person and their company. Later on, we're going to try generics. We're going to compare. Does the fact that we say your name or your company matter in terms of people watching the video or like agreeing to come to the meeting? All sorts of things. And then we're gonna grab notes here. Blah blah blah. Yeah, we can look at a lot of these things. We're taking notes on what things you guys want us to test. We'll definitely test them. I'll come back and share the insights again in a few months, Katie, if you're okay with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love this. And these questions that keep coming into the chat are great. So I'm really excited for us to kind of dig into what those are going to look like too. And hopefully, you know, if anyone has more questions, you all know how to get a hold of Tito. You can find any of us on LinkedIn and drop a message of like, hey, can you do research on this? I doubt Tito would say no. So please make sure you're reaching out and getting some advice and giving them new ideas. So hopefully we can present something even more valuable for all of you next time too. So cool.
Awesome.
Well,
we had a lot of fun. Hopefully people enjoyed it. Have a good one, everybody.
Absolutely. Thanks, everyone. Have a great one. See you next time.